the V, and if it has a dot, that's the B. That's getting into modern stuff and pronunciation. I'm not going to go into that, but I'm just trying to show you there's a correlation, and if I draw the number 1 like this, there's a shape of the ancient aleph where they just simply went like this. And it became our number 1. Even though I draw the aleph like that, if you draw 2 lines with a vertical, sometimes you'll see ancient inscriptions that look like that. What I'm showing you is that the symbols that we agree on have all developed out of the same base way back when. If you look in the dictionary, this word spelled aleph vav tav means exactly the same thing as tav vav. It's a sign, a symbol, and some kind of insignia. But also, it says that this means an oath, O-A-T-H. Well, now here's the thing, the letter tav, Paleo-Hebrew and X, modern Hebrew shaped like that, it might be pronounced as a T or an S or a TH. So this word is pronounced oat, or it could be pronounced oath. What's an oath? An oath is something that you say that represents what you've committed yourself to. It's exactly the same concept as Shavah, Shin, Bet, Ayin, which is the number for 7. And the number 7 is the letter Zayin, drawn as a weapon, which means if you give a vow, which is your oath, you swear a vow, and you break the vow, you are put to the weapon. You're either beaten with a whip or you're cut in half with a sword. But you have to pay if you break the vow. Which is why Abraham cut the animals in half and laid them aside, and then the pillar of fire and smoke walked through. I'm trying to show you that all these pictures play into it. So why should this say you is oat, and the kaf is as a suffix is this open hand? What does that mean? It means there's something about your, this is you or your, when you have a kaf as a suffix, something about your oath. So he's going to make visible something about your oath of expressing aleph tav, which is the conditions of righteously. You live righteously, you get blessed. You live wickedly, you get the curse. That's what we swore an oath to live up to. And aleph tav, the same way that there was this word that he projects his will into this word in John 1, and out comes the entire physical universe, as we will talk later, and we've had conversations with people. So too, there's something about this aleph tav that it makes manifest something that was just an idea. So he's going to show you what aleph tav looks like. So he sticks it into aleph tav, and out comes the pattern of the Mishkan. Now the other interesting thing about this is that if you look in Jeremiah 31, I think it's 31, he says, no more will every man have to say, hey, you should know the Lord. You don't have to go to Sunday school. You don't have to read the books and listen to all these sermons. Yahuwah said, no more shall every man say to his brother, oh, you should. Let me tell you about how to comprehend him, because they will all know me. Okay? If you look at the way he spelled the word me, it happens to be spelled Aleph, Vav, Tav, Yod. Aleph, Vav, Tav, Yod. Oti. When it's translated, they will all know me. Now, I've talked to people who said, hey, I know the Lord, I don't need to hear about this stuff. Is that what he was talking about? Yet they don't know his name, they don't know the Shabbat, they don't know his Moedim, they don't know his instructions, they don't know about the Mishpat, of what goes around comes around. In fact, they don't even know that his kingdom, his throne, is founded on Mishpat and Tzedakah. They have no idea what Emet and Hesed means, which is to say, it says in Psalms there, Emet and Hesed precede his face. Like a processional, a bride coming down the aisle, and you got the flower girl and all the bridesmaids, and then the bride shows up. Which is to say, if there's not truth and kindness happening, his presence won't even show up. Now, I've been in churches before, part of the worship team, where you're playing music, and it acts as a processional. You start playing music, everybody gets in the right frame of mind, the right attitude, you say a few prayers, and all of a sudden the Spirit shows up. That's a processional. He didn't say, if you play the right notes, he'll show up. Though he might. I'm not saying he won't. But that's not what it said in Psalms. What it said in Psalms is, truth and kindness are the processional for him to make an appearance. So then it goes down to say, the question is, what's the truth? If we're saying stuff that isn't true, he won't show up. If we're not being kind to one another, he won't show up. So the parashah of Mishpatim that says, this is the way you relate to each other. If you think your brother ripped you off, or this other guy's lying to you, or he stole something, or he's just aggravating the bejeebers out of you, you kind of quench the Spirit, which means his presence leaves. So for us to walk in the truth, to walk in kindness, to walk in balanced scales, to acknowledge the protocol of the authority of the house, of the land, because the people that own the house and the land have a certain responsibility to care for those under their jurisdiction. All this plays together with even expecting Yahweh's presence to be in our midst. And he said, as we just read, that he gave the pattern of this Mishkan so that he might dwell amongst his people. Yes, it's talking about this architectural edifice, which we're going to get to in just a moment. But I'm trying to build this up to tell you it's a lot more than that building. How much more? When he says, they will all know me, if you look in Strong's Concordance, the word for oat is what I've told you. It's a sign, it's a symbol. It's the word for oath, which means an agreement. But then if you look in the Red Dictionary, it says it's a letter of the alphabet. An Aleph Vav Tav is a letter of the alphabet. Why? Because a letter of the alphabet, if I wrote the letter A in modern English, or if I wrote the letter Bet in Hebrew, it's just a symbol, like a note. What does it mean? In English, it doesn't mean anything. You put it in the context, like the lines, and suddenly you know what it is. And when Yahweh says, you will all know me, you could read this as my oath according to the letters of the alphabet. Because the word spelled Aleph Vav Tav means letters of the alphabet. How will everybody know him? Because he's plainly described in the letters of the alphabet. That's the way I choose to read that. They will all know OT. From the least of these to the greatest. Now, if you read from the least of these to the greatest, the rabbinical commentary at the bottom of the page, and also in some study Bibles, it means the people that will know him are the children, because the word is kuf tet, nun, katan. Kuf tet is where we get here. And kuf tet is our letters Q-T. Cutie. Oh, they're a cutie little thing. Little cutie. It means small little cute thing. So, that's like little children. The word migdal, mem, gimel, dalet, lamed, that's the word for tower, like the Migdal David, or the Tower of David, is this citadel, this bastion that you have on the wall of the castle, which is the strongest place in the wall. Is he saying Oh, those are the rabbis. Those are the professors. Those are the great scholars. Now there's another way to read the sentence. You won't have to say, oh, you should know, you should understand who Yahuwah is, because they will all know me, my letters of the alphabet, because I'm in the letters of the alphabet. From the least to the greatest. From the least what to the greatest? The least letter to the greatest letter? No, they're all the same. There's no letter greater than the other. But in the past, the letters of this alphabet are simply letters. And when there's a little child and you're teaching him to read, what do? A, B, C, D, E, F, G. You start teaching them how to read with cute little songs so that they can process it and organize it in their mind. I'm trying to show you that each letter of this alphabet is Yahweh himself expressed in literary form, and that very literary form became the human being we call Yahusha HaMashiach. That's the tower, the citadel, the bastion of incredible insight. And for the letters themselves to transpose from being considered a cute little thing to the most significant thing in the entire universe. Why is understanding the Hebrew letters the most significant thing in the entire universe? Go back to John 1. Here, I'll address it here. I've hinted at addressing it. I'm not sure if everybody's heard of it, but we'll just go over it real quick. Think of this as a riddle. The question of the riddle is, what is that word? Okay? Quoting John 1, paraphrasing it. In the beginning was the Word. Okay, now this means that before the Almighty Creator of the heavens and the earth created the heavens and the earth, before He created the heavens and the earth, He first created a Word. Okay, that means before He created the angels, before He created the devil, before He created anything, even before, according to John 3:16, even before there was an only begotten Son, He created a Word. So here's the Almighty, Echad, the Infinite One, without beginning and without end. So somewhere way in the past, He comes up with a Word. And for all intents and purposes, it says, this Word is Him. Then it says it's also with Him. Now, in English, I'm here, and now this book is with me. But it's not me. It's just an association to me. So here's part of the riddle. How can something be Him, but be other than Him? It either is or it ain't. But how can it be both? If something's with, how can it also be is? Suddenly the riddle has got your brain messed up. Why? Because our brains are on a certain track, like a railroad track. Our brains were designed to function in a certain way, and now all of a sudden this riddle comes and shoves the train off the track and says, now figure it out. And it's like, I can't, you just derailed my natural thought process. Yep.
I'd suggest Greek thinking, which we've been programmed to do, versus Hebrew thinking.
Now, if you don't know what he just said, there's two different ways to think. Did you know there's two different ways to think? There might even be 10 different ways to think, but he just invoked two. There's the concept that Hebrew thinking is cyclical as a pattern, and that Greek thinking is linear in a pattern. What does that mean? If I say the alphabet goes, the English alphabet, A, B, C, D, X, Y, Z, okay, it starts at A and ends in Z. That's a linear thought. But if I were to tell you that the Hebraic way to think is cyclical, circle, then I could say, well, instead of writing it in a straight line, let's think of it in a circle where you go Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Het, Tet, Yod, Kaf, Lamed, Nun, Samech, Kaf, Hey, Zadi, Kuf, Resh, Shin, Tav, Aleph. Oh, Tav is coming back around into Aleph again. So there's this circle pattern. And you can say, I don't even know what that means. because it's new information. And the whole thing about learning Hebrew is to learn a different track of thinking. So if it seems awkward, that's because it is awkward. If it seems jarring, it's because it is jarring. If it seems like foreign, it's because it is foreign. Except, I maintain that the alphabet was the original language, and that when humans were made, they were made thinking in Hebrew. Therefore, it's not foreign at all. It's intrinsically, naturally you. This is like coming home to your origin. Coming back to the Garden of Eden is to speak Hebrew. So I suggest that, or I maintain that, Hebrew was the language spoken before the Tower of Babel, and that through the Tower of Babel incident, when all the other languages changed, Hebrew didn't. And then I also then maintained that Hebrew was the language spoken before the flood, so that Adam and Noah were speaking Hebrew. That can't be proved by finding artifacts. But I can prove it logically, which hopefully we're going to get to here just in a few minutes in this talk. But I'm trying to build this whole thing to show you the significance of what this all means. If he says, they will all know me, from the least of these to the greatest, it doesn't say who he's talking about. But if we read it, they will all know me because I am my oath revealed in every letter of the alphabet. And then you will reconsider the significant value of that perception. Instead of being simply cute little things that you teach your children, these are towering bastions, the towers on my kingdom, my castle. My throne is built on these letters. It's like, wow. When we say, thy kingdom come, thy will be done, we are invoking the meaning of the Aleph Tav. We're invoking his balanced scales of Mishpat. We are invoking, calling in the meaning of every one of these letters to be put on display and rule, reign, stand. And yet we don't even know that when we're saying the prayer, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. What are we saying? We have a little idea from our English minds, but the Hebrew concept is huge. And it's perceptible if you study the letters. So if this says, see you, I'm going to show you what? Show you the Aleph Vav Tav, show you the letters of the alphabet. Why didn't he spell it Aleph Tav Hey? Well, he could have, and it's Aleph Vav Tav Kaf. Your Aleph Vav Tav. Your oath, your place fit into the letters of the alphabet. What I'm trying to show you here is that you can sit here and ponder, navigating every little word to gain a deeper understanding. It's not just read the sentence, what does the sentence mean? Let me show you another thing about this word here, tabanit. An interesting way this word is spelled. You've got the letter tav, remember, is a sign, a mark. Then you have bet, nun, yod, and then another tav. Well, if the tav is a mark or a sign, it's the mark or sign of what? As we showed earlier, if you have the ox and you set them towards the tav is the target. But if you have a contract that you have two-party sign, they'll write an X. Even today, here's an X, sign your name. And if you can't sign your name because you're illiterate or your hand is hurt, you can simply just mark an X. Because when you mark that X, it's the symbol, like a note, that says my entire being, everything in my mind and my heart is in agreement, and I'm dropping it onto this page by simply making a note, a mark. That's the letter Tav. So here is two Tavs, this one and that one. And you might find it interesting that the letter Tet is circle with a Tav in it, is a picture like a signet ring. It's a circle with a Tav in it. Or sometimes as a side view, it's known as like a basket or a full basket. So here's a basket, and it's filled to the full, filled up, overflowing. There's more stuff in the picture symbols. But so this is like a tav in the beginning and tav in the end. And again, somebody would tell you this is not the way you read Hebrew, but I'm trying to show you pictures in the ancient Hebrew. Pictures. My own subjective art history, you might say, even if you want to discredit it. The point is, this is like two signatories of a contract, a covenant. This guy signs up, and this guy signs up, and they come to an oath. And what's in between? What's mediating the covenant? Bet nun yod. This word son, when you put a yod at the end, it's my son. My son mediating the covenant contract between two parties. That's the idea of Yeshua HaMashiach. He is the mediator of the covenant contract between Yahweh and his people Israel. To say, my son, between the two letters tav, is the word pattern. That word pattern is also paradigm, model, or form. It's translated different ways. So you could say there's something about the Mishkan and the way it's laid out. If we were going to draw like a blueprint of designing it, if I draw the blueprint of how the Mishkan is going to be set up, something about that pattern is a picture of Yeshua mediating the signatories of the contract, which is the expression of Aleph Tav. So I can just look at Exodus 25 and read about how the Mishkan was designed and expect to see something about the letters of the alphabet expressing the Aleph Tav full package of everything Yahweh wants to say to his people and the dynamic of the relationship between them. Something in that pattern. The word Mishkan. Hey, simply the. Mem, remember as we said before, it's to put it into a tangible sort of form. And then here's Shin, Kaf, Nun. Sheken. There's two words for sukkah. One is spelled Samik Kaf, hey, and the other one could be Shin Kaf, hey. They're both similar because both these letters have the S phonetic. But if we look at the word Sheken, it's where in English we get the word shack or shack. A shack is not a mansion as much as a kind of a quickly put together, sort of a casual place to reside. If you have a little tent in the woods, that's kind of a shack, whether it's made out of wood or fabric or an igloo or... This word sheken literally means to be neighborly, to dwell together, to sit down and rest a spell, have a cup of coffee, smoke a cigar together, have a glass of lemonade, sit there and fish together in a little booth. Whatever it might be, hanging out with somebody is Sheken. Have you ever heard of Shekinah? I heard it said that Shekinah, which is simply Sheken with the hey suffix, and the hey suffix is the feminine form. If there was a vav suffix, Shekano, it would be the masculine form. The point is, Shekinah, well, that's feminine form, so they say, oh, Shekinah, they put an I sound in here, that would be a yod. Oh, that's the female name of the Holy Spirit. Not really. If somebody wants to believe that, it's like, okay, name your Barbie doll something other than Barbie. That's okay, you know. Shekinah means, here, if you take the word Zadik, it means righteous. If you take Zadikah, with the hey at the end, it's righteousness. What's righteousness? It's the expression of what does righteous look like. So the feminine suffix doesn't mean boy or girl, man or woman. What it means is something being expressed. Again, going back to that hey, atah is you. You are expressing what came before it. What I'm trying to show you there is that you can look at how other words are put together. Zadik, zadikah. At, atah. Shekin, shekinah. And you find that there's this system of how the words are developed, are used, are spelled. And as you start thinking about that, you're navigating the language. When I say navigating the language, there's a certain word, goy. You familiar with that word? It's translated nations. It doesn't mean bad guys, it doesn't mean heathens, it just means nations, groups of people. Well, if you look at goy in Paleo, Gimel, Vav, Yod. So this word goy, G-O-I, read that way. The Yod is a suffix that kind of means my, so it's talking about how this is done. The Vav is the masculine suffix, as we mentioned. So this letter Gimel is the whole root of that word. Well, that's just one letter. Remember I said earlier, Gimel's like this verb, action with the letter with the foot moving around, going back and forth. So if I change, I'm just showing you how to do a little bit of study using the dictionary. If I change the masculine suffix to a feminine suffix, so I'm getting rid of the Vav Yod and making it a Hey, Ga. If I add the Hey in the first letter, Haga, I can now find that word in the dictionary. And that word literally means to think, ponder, meditate, to hum. But it also means steering wheel, helm, rudder, phonetic, phonics, pronunciation. What it's telling us is how you think about speaking words. The phonetics of words is navigation, which sets up your national identity. So the nations were separated at the Tower of Babel according to their language, because your language causes you to think a certain way. I heard it said that if you were raised speaking one language, say Japanese, and you were raised another language, say Norwegian, and then you come together to learn another language, say English, even though you're speaking the same language, the one who was taught to think in one language first is going to completely think differently than the other one thinking another language, even though they're both speaking the same language. There's something about language which sets up how you chart your course through life. And so when Alexander the Great wanted to conquer the peoples that he first whooped into submission militarily, the first thing he did was change their language. In North America, the indigenous peoples that were here when they were conquered were forbidden to speak their language, and those who persisted lost their tongues. I know a guy whose grandmother had her tongue cut out by the missionary priests. The point is, for us to go back to this language is to go back under the thinking processes of the author of this language, which is Yahweh. Because these letters are his identity, which is why OT is translated simply me, M-E. Who is me? I am the oath designated by every one of the letters of my alphabet. That's the way I see that. Which is to say, if we learn the letters of the alphabet, if we even think about the letters of the alphabet, if we ponder the construction of words, we're pondering him. We're navigating his consciousness. We're spending time, as it were, in prayer, which is communication. If we're simply reading Hebrew, if we're looking at the pictures and trying to understand, why is this letter shaped like that? Why does this letter fit into this word that's translated this way? It's not, gee, you're spending time, wasting your time doing that other study, and you really should be reading the Bible. If you're sitting there contemplating the word mishpat, I'm saying it's just as good as reading the Bible. Maybe even better.